Okay, welcome back. This is part 2 of 4 in my unlettered rant, Sell It All or Hold the Line. Okay, so in part 1, I addressed the question of why the 30th anniversary product was priced at $1,000 and why it matters. And so far we established that Wizards is not pricing these by accident and will continue to price sets like this as high as the underlying equity can justify. And they're doing this for their own self-interests, not because they care about us or the secondary market or any of that. This is an entirely selfish business move that happens to be healthier for the secondary market. As healthy as it could be, aside from them just not doing this at all. So anyway, as we'll see now, even if that doesn't hold up, and as the singles hit the market, the prices drop down, I am not nearly as concerned about that as I was before I started taking this apart and really looking at numbers. And I want to take you guys through that as well. I accumulated a lot of data. I spent a while processing it. Perhaps I'll post the spreadsheet somewhere just so people can cross-check. But in the following 3 parts of this little rant, I'm going to cover how this 30th set and the inevitable future CE sets will impact the current prices and fundamentals. We'll do that now. Next, I want to discuss what you should do with your reserve list cards, silver and bronze era stuff. And then in the final part, I'm going to discuss if I think you should buy this product and if I'm going to buy this product. Okay, so part 2. Sit back. This one is a little bit number heavy, but you know, if you want to sort through this, that's what's needed. Okay, how will this impact the price of reserve dual lands? Those cards, of course, are the subject of the most concern right now. Dual lands from earlier sets, Alpha Beta Unlimited, are more heavily saturated by collectors versus players. You know, the sort of collector curve is at a peak for the old stuff and plateaus for the new stuff, and the player curve is somewhat inverted. And so the biggest risk here when you're talking about dual lands is revised. And then likewise, once they do this for silver and bronze age staples, what's going to happen? Is there anything we can predict? Are there any boundaries we can put on what this might do? Cool. Well, obviously, we can't predict the future. There are some variables that I do think we can tease out, and we can put some numbers and boundaries on. But obviously, we'll only be looking at a couple factors, and there are many other things that could come into play. But I think this is a useful exercise. So first, supply and demand. More supply is going to mean lower prices. But how much lower? Let's get into the numbers. So the first thing that's useful to figure out is how many of this new 30th set. What's the print run going to be? That's important. How many of these boxes will be printed? And from there, can we calculate how many of each type of card? Let me just cut this open first. All right. Okay, so using some recent numbers, if you remember the Dominaria United set with the Lost Legends, they advertised that 3% of the collector's boxes would contain Lost Legends. Well, the internet went to work, taking still shots from the videos that they showed and the comments they made about how many Legends boxes they quote-unquote found. And people were able to predict what the print run was of the Dominaria United collector's boxes. You know, we don't know this for sure. I've seen various numbers, but 150,000 seems to be the best justified number that I came across. So Dominaria United, which was not a limited product, had a print run of 150,000 boxes. The 30th anniversary is supposed to be a limited product. So it stands to reason that it's going to be printed less than Dominaria United. Otherwise, what would it mean to qualify it as limited? However, I'm going to use the number 150,000 as a worst case scenario, because that would be a ceiling. They could print as many as that and still claim it was limited. If they printed more than a standard print run, they really would have no way to justify it. So to calculate the pull rate of any particular rare, you have to use this equation that I'm showing on the screen. 122 out of 123, so that's the print run size, to the power of 5.2. That's because there are 4 rare slots in each box, 4 packs, 1 rare, plus a 30% chance of getting a rare in the retro slot. So you got 5.2 chances on the pull. Multiply that by 150,000 boxes, and you get 6,200 of each rare. Now there are twice as many duels as other rares, so that would be 12,400 of each dual land printed. Again, I'm using the highest number that's reasonable to estimate. A more reasonable number would probably be a third of that. But let's just go with it. 12,400 of each duel coming to market. Okay, well, how many duels currently exist? Well, there were 1,008 alpha, 3,020 something beta, 25 I think, 16,784 unlimited. Revised, I've seen estimates between 150,000 and 289,000, but 250K seems to be a pretty agreed upon number. And then Collector's Edition and International Edition combined were 14,200. They ordered 15,000, but they were shorted by the printers. And then we've got foreign black border and white border cards. I couldn't find any data on that print run. Again, though, you know, it was definitely more than unlimited, which was 17,000. And it was probably less than revised, which was 250,000. But let's take the worst case again. Let's say that the print run of the foreign cards was the same as unlimited, 17,000. So if you add that up, you get 302,107 dual lands. So that is the lower bound estimate, and then 12,400 of the new ones is the upper bound estimate. And so our worst case scenario, we're introducing 4.1% of the print run back to the market. But it's a little bit worse than that, because if you take attrition, figure 50% of the original print run is lost, then you're actually adding 8.2% more supply to the market. And so there is your worst case scenario, I think. More practical scenario, the 30th anniversary is probably going to have more like a 50,000 box print run. In this case, there'd be about 2,000 of each rare, or 4,150 of each duel. And we could probably more accurately predict the foreign print run to something like 100K. So using those more practical numbers and doing 50% attrition on the original stuff, you'd be looking at a 2.2% increase in the supply. Ooh, balance. So point being, we're not talking huge numbers here. Even when I just do the worst case I can justify with the numbers, we're looking at an 8% increase in supply. Okay, but still, the question is still hovering over our heads. How will this impact the price? Well, that depends on the market depth. And to predict this, we need to understand how many buyers will choose these alternative products over the real cards. And it turns out we have some really helpful data on what happens to a card when an official but non-tournament version is available. And we'll get to that in just a second. Let me just take a look at balance. Very nice card. This guy is tricky to find at near mint. As you can see, this one isn't, you know, sort of the... Oop, lost my light. Sorry about that. This guy isn't quite the near mint quality I usually go for. But because he's so tough to find, I do tend to grab him in the condition I can. There are 6 of these guys on the market, 2 of which are damaged, and 1 of which is near mint. And they're priced between $1,900 for the damaged ones and $10,000 for the one near mint one. I could find no recent sales on this guy except the one that I got here. And his population is 157, 56 of which are near mint. Okay, so we're going to have new cards come to the market, but it's not exactly the same. It's going to appeal to some percentage of players, but not all players. And these cards, I think, hold the key to figuring out what that percent is. Now, if you're not familiar with these are called championship decks. They did them in the 90s. I don't know when it stopped. I think it went into the early 2000s, but I could be wrong. But anyway, as you can see, these are alternate backed cards. The front has a distinct gold border and a signature. And included in these decks were some reserve list cards, like Gaia's Cradle, Metalworker. And these have been on the market for, you know, a decade and a half. And some percentage of players choose them over the real cards. So let's dig into that, because this is where it starts to get interesting. All of the following data, by the way, is from TCG Player. Forgive me if there's a few cuts. I am... Whoopsie. Forgive me if there's a few cuts in the video here. I am struggling with my voice. My kids are sick, and that tends to spread through the family, so I'm not quite at 100% over here. If I start coughing or if my voice cuts out, I just have to pause the recording here, so excuse that discontinuity if you would. Anyway, all the following numbers are from TCG Player. So the absolute numbers I give aren't going to be accurate to the market as a whole, but the ratios certainly should be a good metric. So what I did is I went on TCG Player, I pulled up the World Champion decks, I sorted that by most popular, and then I pulled out the most popular reserve list cards, and I counted all the sales from August 15th through today. So that's 2 full months of sales data. I also looked at the quantities that are available. Not the listings, the actual quantity of cards. And the cards that come back on that match are Gaia's Cradle, Grim Monolith, Survival of the Fittest, City of Traders, Yawgmoth's Will, and Metalworker. So let's take a look at those in reverse order. And there's some important patterns here. Ooh, look at that. First, Metalworker. So there are 180 copies, gold bordered copies, available on the market right now. And over the last 2 months, 49 copies sold. Over that same time frame, 137 copies of the real card sold. Which means 26% of buyers elected to get the gold copy, and all of the rest paid for the real copy, which costs 4.2 times more. The other thing is, I mentioned there were 137 sales. Well, there are 180 of the gold bordered cards on the market. So that means there were enough gold bordered cards to have serviced every single one of those purchases. Ooh, nice earthbind. I have quite a few of her. I love the art. I don't think it's nearly as creepy as people say it is. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know. When Wizards decides that something shouldn't be consumed by the players, it makes me more interested in it. I don't agree with Rudy's recent video about how the price is skyrocketing. She's not. You can still get her between $180 and $250. Lightning Bolt is minimum of a $600 card, $1,000 for a really nice one. So I'm not sure why he said that these are coming up to the price of Lightning Bolt. I would actually probably not buy her right at the moment, just because it tends to cause a temporary market jump. But anyway, next, Yawgmoth's Will. So there's actually two gold versions. I just combined them into one. So for this card, there were 19 sales of the gold bordered copy version over the last 2 months. 179 copies are available on the market. The real card had 112 sales over the same time window. So 15% of buyers elected for the gold version of the card. And the other 85% paid 4.1 times more money to get the real one. City of Traders. 341 copies of the gold bordered version are available on the market, and 56 sold over the last 2 months. There were 92 sales of the real card over the same 2 months. So in this case, 37% of buyers elected for the gold card, and all of the rest paid a 13x premium to get the real one. Once more, notice 92 sales of the real card, while 341 copies of the gold bordered card are available on the market for the taking at 1/13 of the price. Survival of the Fittest. 72 sales of the gold version of the card going back the last 2 months. 116 copies are on the market. The real card had 100 sales. So that's 42% of buyers elected for the gold card, and the rest paid a 7.2x markup for the real one. Grim Monolith also has 2 gold editions. I combined them. 502 cards are for sale on the market, and in the last 2 months, 85 sold. During those same 2 months, the real card sold 132 copies. So here we have 39% of people go for the gold version, and 61% go for the real version and pay 9.9 times more money. Finally, I've got Gaia's Cradle. There are 95 copies of the gold version available on the market right now. And over the last 2 months, 33 copies sold. Compared to the real card, over the last 2 months, 82 copies sold. So that means 29% of the buyers went for the gold card, and everyone else paid 5.1 times more money for the real card. Okay, takeaways. So in every example that I just showed, there are always plenty of gold bordered copies for sale. Often more copies of the gold than the real card. And also, in every single case, there were enough gold listings to have fully covered the real cards that sold during those 2 months. In other words, all of the sales could have been gold. It wasn't a supply issue that pushed people to the real cards. It was something else. All right, let's do some averages now. The average cost multiplier between a real card and a gold card is 7.25x. So on average, you're paying 7.25 times more money to get the real card. And on average, 31% of people choose the gold, and 69% of people choose the real. 69%. That's 3.2 to 1 ratio, favoring the real cards. All right, let's take that data back to the duels. So I think it's safe to assume the same thing would happen here. A card like Gaia's Cradle is selling for $1,000. This is an expensive card, not quite as liquid as a dual land, but pretty close. And that card is seeing, in that case, a little bit less, but about 31% of the market chooses to go gold, and all of the rest are still coughing up for the full price. So assuming that carries over to dual lands, 31% of the market will leave and will now start competing for this between 2 and 8% supply increase of proxied cards. So that's a 31% drop in demand for the real stuff. So what's that going to do to the prices? All right, to figure this out, I took the total sales of all 10 revised dual lands on TCG Player going back to July 1st. So that's 3.5 months of sales. And here's the stats on that. I'm going to put this up on the screen so you can take a good look at it. And then I will read just the summary here. So across all 10 duels, there were 2,157 sales the last 3.5 months. A total of $853,280.22 were spent on 2,222 individual cards. So that's a 3.5 month moving average price across all 10 dual lands of $392.57 per duel. And you can see that that varies a bit between the duels. Volcanic Island had the most volume. Let's see, Plateau had the least, I think. Okay, so then I took that tabulated data and I sorted it by sale price. And then I removed the top 31% of the most expensive purchases from each land. So this simulates if 31% of the demand, which in this case is 688 cards, if 31% of the demand had instead been routed to another product. And so those highest asks were never paired with a bid. That's what I'm trying to simulate. And you know, this is how market price is determined. So removing those sales simulates what the market price should have been, all else being equal, if 31% of the demand vanished and only the lower 69% of the asks filled. And note that this is going to be an overestimate of the impact on the price, because by simply removing the most expensive purchases, I am disproportionately filtering out near mint prices, and near mints command a premium of their own. So a slightly more accurate way to do this would be to try and distribute that 31% across the different conditions. But again, I prefer to just do worst case scenarios here. So I just chopped off the top 31% of all sales. And let's just take a quick look at this, and then I'll show you what that did. Okay, decent condition. pretty nice. Surface on the back is clean. Surface on the front's got a little bit of gunk. I love the art on this card. I don't know, so simple, but I love it. This guy, there's 5 of these on the market. No near mints are available. But he's priced between $800 and $1,800. I saw one recent sale of a heavily played copy for $407. And the pop on this guy is 123. And I think it was 47 maybe are in near mint. Okay, so I pulled the top 31% of all the sales off, and this is what's left. So I'll throw this on the screen again. Feel free to pause it if you're curious for the specifics, but in the interest of time, I will just summarize. The total transaction volume, going back the last 3.5 months, is now 534,825, which is down 37% from what it was before. We have now only moved 1,534 individual cards, which is obviously 31% less than the 2,222. And this results in a 3.5-month moving average price across all duels of $356.39. So the 3.5-month rolling average market price went down from $392.57 per duel to $356.39 per duel. That is 9.216% down. In other words, there is enough liquidity and supply that removing 31% of the highest bids, removing 31% of the demand, only pulls the market down by 9.21%. And once again, that is an overestimate because it disproportionately filters out near mint sales. So 9.21%. How do we interpret that number? The answer is carefully. We interpret that number very carefully. So it's a decent sample that I took here. It's close to $1 million in sales data over 3.5 months, 10 cards, which is hopefully representative. And it's using the 6 most popular gold-bordered reserve list staple cards. So that's a good data set, I think, but obviously not perfect. And this number doesn't account for a couple things. So first of all, I'm not making any comment about the underlying market. If the whole market tanks 50% tomorrow, that will be additive. So I'm not predicting a 9.2% drop. I'm suggesting a 9.2% drop in addition to whatever else the market might be doing. You know, the market is very high, historically speaking. So if we're due for a correction, that is still coming. And the market sentiment is definitely adding downward pressure at the moment. So yeah, those effects would all be additive. The other thing that number does not do is account for the desirability of these proxies. People may love them. You know, I mean, the front is going to look better than a gold bordered card because on the front, they look real. So possibly they'll be more appealing to players. Or possibly all this drama will make players hate them. You know, maybe they'll become readily accepted in play groups. Maybe they'll be widely rejected. That will, of course, change the calculus a bit. And this also doesn't account for any widespread panic or fire selling of reserve list cards that may or may not be taking place. Again, that would sort of be underlying market movement, and that would be additive. So what can we say? The appearance of these 30th anniversary cards on the market in the quantities that we're expecting is not a market crashing event in and of itself. We're talking between 2 and 8% of the original print runs reappearing, but in proxy form. And that does not indicate to me that cards can't continue to rise afterwards. All gold proxied, all original cards that are already gold proxied have greatly appreciated since those printings. The introduction of these cards does not remove all demand from the real cards. This guy's a little scratched up. Love my monolith though. So again, across the data set of gold bordered playable cards, playable staples that I pulled, 31% of purchases do favor those, but 69% of purchases favored the real thing, even at the markup of 7.25x, 725% higher price tag. And you know, those options already exist, and the player base divides itself in a consistent way across the sample. You know, these are different players. The numbers just fall out in that way. So I don't see a reason why it would be much different. So speaking in terms of fundamentals, I see these 30th anniversary proxy cards representing a 9.2% hit against the fundamental value of the reserve list cards that they're reprinting, in addition to whatever the market might be doing separately. And that concludes the second part of this unending rant. So next we're going to talk about your Silver and Bronze Age reserve list cards, and if you should hold that line. And then in the final part, I'll just briefly discuss if you should buy this product, and if I'm planning to. So, talk to you there soon. Thanks for watching today's video. If you're enjoying my content and you want to see more cool cards in the future, then consider adopting me, and then you can pay for my insane habit. See you next time.